It's no blood, no foul.
It's no blood, no foul.
It's no blood, no foul.
Crying for cause we took your morale.
Congratulations till we run that clock out. MSG to Mecca, this is our house. NYC forever when we mob out. See that kid drip, got that clock clout.
It's no blood, no foul.
It's no blood, no foul.
It's no blood, no foul. Emotions spill on the court when you proud. To rep your city, New York's the hometown. Playgrounds prepare me for them hard fouls. Diving on the asphalt and driveways.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the No Blood, No Foul podcast presented by Real GM. I'm your host, Slice, and tonight I'm joined by my co-hosts, Coke and Jim, as well as our executive producer, Moo. Also joining us as an ally tonight, we have fellow Knick content creator from the Strickland website, and Pod Strickland, which you can follow on Twitter at Strickland Pods, as well as his personal Twitter at Shwinny Poo. Shwin is with us. Shwin, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. Pretty good night. I decided to join up, so should be a fun one.
Definitely a big one, right? The Knicks keep winning as their winning streak now goes to 8 straight as they won the most important game of the season thus far, 137-127 in overtime against the Atlanta Hawks to go up over 6 games over 500, 33-27 for the season. You know, the Knicks got up to a small lead early on behind some hot three-point shooting, but the Hawks went on a 14-0 run real quick to take advantage of some Knicks turnovers early on to go up by 9 late in the quarter, ultimately heading into the second up 5, 39-34. Trae Young had a big opening 12 minutes, dropping 16 for the Hawks. You know, the Knicks were able to take a quick little 2-point lead early in the second behind a good first half from Derrick Rose as he provided some scoring catalysts along with Julius Randle, but traded the lead with the Hawks down the stretch to go into the half down 2, 69-67. Julius Randle, as I mentioned, led the Knicks with 20, while Trae Young led the Hawks with 18 points and 10 assists. You know, the Knicks were able to cut into the lead a little bit in the fourth, to bring it in the third, I should say, bringing it down to 4. But an Elfrid Payton stretch took the momentum away from the team, and he was thankfully yanked for the rest of the game about halfway through the third. But the Knicks went into the fourth, losing a little bit of that momentum, down 7, 97-90. The Hawks were without Trae Young in the fourth quarter as he rolled his ankle there in the third in what was kind of a physical game with injuries for both teams. But the Knicks were able to take advantage as he took a 15-0 run to turn an 8-point deficit into a 7-point advantage. The Hawks then came back to eventually tie it, but Julius Randle took the ball hard to the hoop to give the Knicks a 122-119 lead with 6.2 seconds to go. But Bogdan Bogdanovic hit a corner 3 to force overtime. From OT, the Knicks rolled quick and never looked back, scoring the first 10 to ultimately end up with that 10-point win that I mentioned in the biggest game so far to move into sole possession of fourth in the East. Julius Randle dropped his 5th 30-plus point game in the last 6, which was actually ended up being his 3rd 40-point game of the season, while D. Rose and IQ dropped 20 pieces off the bench. In some late news that just broke recently, Norvel Pelle, who filled in big for Taj Gibson and Nerlens Noel when they were out, actually earned a multi-year deal from the Knicks after the game. So, you know, boys, the good times just keep on rolling with the squad. I feel like we keep saying this, but this was the best win of the season. You know, I feel like we said this the last few games, but this one was definitely it by far. Coke, kick us off with your thoughts, man. Once you get off mute, you can kick us off with your thoughts.
Good catch. But yeah, like I was saying, man, like I'm excited. And how could you not be at this point? You know, this is a hell of a stretch that we're going through. The Knicks are playing great basketball and it's providing great entertainment. And tonight was just another one of those nights. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it was at a certain point where we weren't really playing our game. You know, we're relying on offense. You know, the defense was looking bad. Capella was just controlling the boards and, you know, getting so many offensive rebounds and just, you know, cleaning up everything. And it was looking a little shaky for a minute. I had some sweaty palms. But, you know, what I liked is when Randle got a quick breather in the fourth, you know, we buckled down on defense. We started to play a little better. You know, RJ started to shake off the cobwebs. And, you know, I think one of the biggest pieces of the game that was a key was that we got them into the bonus early. I think they were in the penalty with like 6:30 to go. And that really keyed the turnaround because, you know, that makes us more efficient to score points. Then we buckled down and started to get stops, started chipping away, and then controlled the game. And then, it went into overtime after some big shots. We got some contributions from IQ. Randle stepped up late. And, ultimately one of the best wins of the season. I'm proud of the effort that guys put forth tonight. And I think, this is real. You know what I'm saying? This is not just a hot stretch. The team is legitimately good. And I say it's a team. It's not, a collaboration of stars just coming together. This is a team that has chemistry, and I like every minute of it. Jim, give me your thoughts on the game, bro.
So the one thing I notice is it's really important to have multiple guys that can create shots off the dribble. Like you saw, as soon as Trae Young went down, I mean, he's just like the whole engine. Like he's not a part of it. The wheels just really just fell off. And I don't want to like make it sound like a little bit of a Debbie Downer, because it's like I feel like if Trae Young stays in this game, I don't know if we win. And what's so nice is that you can see it in the overtime. It's like we have multiple guys that can create shots, so we don't get like stagnant or really like predictable. Like we ran pick and roll, we did Rose pick and roll with Randle, we did IQ pick and roll with Randle. We were able to isolate Randle. Like also at the same time, it's like you can't really send double teams at Randle too, because it's like he can find RJ. RJ had that nice shot in the overtime where he was able to drive. He also had another drive and kick, a hockey assist to Bullock, and then to IQ for 3. And it seems like so many teams like try to recreate LeBron ball, where it's just like everybody get out of the way and you have just one guy pound the rock for forever. Like the Mavs are like the same way. And it just shows how much more beneficial it is to have multiple guys like your Roses, your IQs, your RJs, and Randles. Mukau, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, you know what? It's come to a point where you're expecting this, which is a good thing, right? It's been, what is it, 7-8 years since we've seen this type of winning basketball. So it definitely feels great. I think, even with Randle being really the main guy, the game ball really should go to Derrick Rose, because he was the stabilizing factor. And it seems like that's his role now. He comes in and he just controls things, right? When the Knicks seem like they're heading towards a downward swing, they bring in Rose, and Rose stabilizes things. He's creating shots. He's obviously not the vintage Derrick Rose, so he doesn't have the explosiveness, but he's almost like replaced it with savviness. I compare it to, I don't know if you guys are Yankee fans, but it's CeCe Sabathia, right? When early in his career, he was throwing 98, 99. He was just throwing the ball by people. That was Rose in his prime. As Sabathia got older and lost the miles on his pitches, he became a crafty pitcher. He's, just as effective. That's what Rose is right now. He's a crafty player that's just really the anchor of this team. Randle is the star. He's the one that does the major damage. But Rose is definitely the stabilizing factor. I do have a nickname for Alfred. I'm going to introduce it here. I'm going to call his nickname to me is Almost. And the reason I say that is, the guy does well to get to the paint, put the ball on the floor and get to the paint, but he keeps missing. So he's the Alfred Almost Payton.
He gets you to the 2-yard line. He never gets you across the goal.
Yeah. It's like I don't know. It's almost like he thinks he's better than he is, right? So yeah. So that's that. Almost is going to be his nickname for me going forward. But one other thing I just want to add is with Noel. I know I've been one of the biggest critics of Noel. I'm still kind of not sold on him. Definitely not as a starting center for this team. Definitely not bring him back for anything larger than what they're paying him this year. But I looked it up and I had to ask Kyle for some better stats. But basic stats, the Knicks are fourth best in opponents' points allowed in the paint. That means they allowed the fourth least points. And I've been critical of him being, basically a non-presence in the paint, right? Not challenging, not intimidating. That stat is pretty surprising to me. So I will give that back to Noel. So he must be doing something right. Maybe I'm being too critical. I don't know. But
you're being too critical.
I'm being too critical. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of my nature. But yeah, again, overall, a spectacular win. I'm just thrilled. At no point, I've been saying for this last few games, at no point did I think they were going to lose. At no point did I expect them to start just giving up and tanking. tanking, as far as games, not for the lottery. They're just playing ball, right? They're doing whatever it takes. Whatever the other team throws at them, they take it and they swing back, and they swing back harder, right? Sometimes literally. So yeah, another great win. Expected at this point. Shwin, what's your take?
Yeah, I think I don't think it's possible to dismiss the importance of, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I'm celebrating it, but Trae Young getting hurt, because he was cutting up the Knicks before that. It's a big reason. Like,
That's why we won.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's why we won, because we played them in Atlanta and he was cutting us up, and then we came back from like 13 down in that game in the fourth quarter. So it's possible like you can make a comeback. We've seen that before from this team. We've seen Tibbs make adjustments that turn games, especially defensively. So I wouldn't say that, but like I do think it obviously played a huge factor, especially when it happened, because we were playing Pell at the 5 and he looked totally lost anytime Trae put him in a pick and roll. And as it was, we were struggling to contain him in pick and roll because Elfrid was not providing any resistance. I have a lot of nicknames for Elfrid Payton, and none of them are longer than 4 letters. But like I think he summed it up himself when he missed like 3 straight shots. 2 of them were just terrible layups that I don't even know how he bricked them as bad as he did. And he immediately just like, there was like a timeout and he just walked to the bench because he knew he was done. He knew he was done for the rest of the game. And he just walked to the bench on his own. He didn't look at Tibbs. He didn't look at any of the coaches. He knew he was done. And that just sums it up perfectly for me, because I have no idea still why he's getting the minutes he does, because I don't really think that they need him to. And even if they do, they can just use him off the bench, but apparently we're not allowed to do that. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about that loser. But I thought Quickley was awesome tonight. I think he's actually played a lot. He had a pretty lengthy little slump there for a while. But I think the last 3 or 4 games, he's looked a lot more lively. And then tonight, he just kind of like wet. He was shooting shots without any hesitation that like for the past 3 or 4, like 2 or 3 weeks, I would say he's been pump faking and then like trying to do something stupid off the dribble that doesn't work. So it was nice to just see him take shots like quick and not hesitate. I thought his defense was actually really good today. I'm not sure that he'll get credit for that, but I thought he was really locked in on defense off ball. And I thought Rose was great. Obviously, Rose is like the engine. When he comes in, he definitely drives the offense. But I thought he was really great. And I thought, like, I know Trae got him in foul trouble, but I thought he did a lot better job on Trae than Elfrid did. And that's not to say, like, he locked down Trae, because Trae was getting in the paint and he was, he only shot 6 of 17, but, like, God knows how many of Capella's offensive rebounds came because, you had 2 guys on Trae and he just got a free run to the rim. But yeah, I mean, I thought he did a lot better job on Trae. I thought he just did a lot better job offensively, obviously. And the other thing was, like, I mean, Julius Randle was awesome. And I know that, like, it's kind of stupid to keep saying it because it's like, how often can you say it? But, every time he plays awesome, I'm going to say it. But he was awesome. Yeah, he had 40 points on 21 shots. 6 of 8 from 3, like 11 rebounds, 6 assists. He did have some questionable clock management decision making at the end of the first half and at the end of the game, actually, because he didn't get that shot off. I don't know if they ended up counting it as an attempt or not, but he definitely didn't get it off. So that was a little bit frustrating. And he had one in overtime too, another 24-second violation in overtime, where he just airballed the shot with, like, because he finally realized, oh shit, the clock's running out. But yeah, he was great. And then RJ Barrett struggled a ton in the first half, but I thought he bounced back well in the second half and hit a really big bucket in OT after Bogdanovich cut it to 5 with like a minute 30 left. So that pushed it back out to 7. And yeah, I mean, just like a really, really good win. The Knicks got lucky, but they took advantage of their luck. And, that's what you have to do in this league, because look, like we saw a couple of days ago, Boston, they got to play the Bulls without Zach LaVine. They lost by 4 points at home. So weird shit happens all the time. You just have to take advantage of it when it rolls in your favor. And the Knicks, to their credit, for the most part of the season, you look at their wins and you look at their losses, most of it makes sense. There's not a lot of wins that you like. There's not a lot of losses that you see that you're like, how the hell did they lose that game? They're you can count on one hand the losses they had like that. So this is a team that takes care of business, and as soon as they got a little opening, they took care of business today.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And Moo, you actually might have a fan of your nickname. Robin in chat says he almost smashes his TV every time he sees Elf in the game. So I'm sure that's a sentiment we can all relate to. But no, it's actually a good thing. And it's, in years past, Knicks fans wanted to smash their TV watching the Knicks. Now it's just seeing a scrub player come in while the rest of the team plays well. So it's definitely a good turnaround. But to me, a couple of things I wanted to point out. Obviously, the Knicks' hot three-point shooting continues. 19 threes this game, 19 to 35 overall. So definitely good, over 50%. Winning the rebound battle. We saw Clint Capella get over 20 rebounds. Yeah, they got us on the offensive rebounds, but the Knicks actually won the rebound battle tonight, 49 to 41, which just goes to show you, the toughness Julius Randle has.
That's shocking because it
felt like we got killed.
Everybody. Yeah.
It felt like we got killed. But that just shows you, like, Nerlens had 10 plus, Julius had 10, and, our guards, they're always crashing the boards. But to me, and we already mentioned it a little bit, D-Rose dropping 20. This is his 10th straight game off the bench in double figures, which is huge because the Knicks, we lack scoring outside of Julius Randle sometimes when RJ goes cold in the first half there. And it's been Derrick Rose very consistently now holding it down and providing those much-needed buckets to keep the Knicks in it. Turnovers were big for us. I think we had 12 in the first half, and Atlanta scored 17 off of them. You take some of those turnovers away, the Knicks are a lot closer than that deficit that they were going into. But Derrick Rose, man, like I said before, Julius Randle might be the superstar for this team, but Derrick Rose is that engine, like you guys mentioned, and we're only going to go as far as he can control that bench and let the bench keep scoring for us.
I want to swing it back to something that, you two guys spoke on, and I think it could also be a Debbie Downer on the game, and I don't want things to get misconstrued. Like, yeah, I know Trey went down and everything, but this is basketball and injuries happen. But what I'm going to say is that a lot of people are going to forget Taj is an integral piece to our lineup. He's an unsung hero. He steps in, and that guy went down for the whole game. And Noel, he missed a sizable portion of the game, and we were reduced to Pell coming in and like just trying to fill minutes, and he didn't have any idea what he was going out there. He was just in the way. It ended up working out for us because like he ended up injuring guys because of that. He was just out there, but
he got a contract out of it.
Yeah, right. But it all evens out, man. You know what I'm saying? So good win nonetheless. And let's also not forget we're down Mitch, for the rest of the year pretty much. So I'm gonna take these. Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna take these wins with no apology, man. This is just good basketball. Like I was talking about this last podcast. I like that things are getting physical. I like that players are getting beat up, guys are getting hurt, got to play through pain, busted eyes, busted jaws. Like this is preparation for the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? So if you can deal with it now, it'll show me that you can deal with it then. So, all around, I just like the resolve this team is showing. And again, I can't say it enough. This is a team, like, they don't really care who gets the job done. When a defense collapses, they're willingly giving it up to the open guy. Again, Bullock coming through again, deadly from three. This is the guy we used to call the fake shooter, and he's turning into a real shooter. And, Burks is out. And we got other players stepping up. RJ was struggling early. Again, we see him fight through it, have a nice turnaround, spurred himself on when he got that big dunk in traffic. He was frustrated, and he let it all out with that game. So, I like everything I'm seeing with this team. And let's just hope. Let's take this winning streak, 8 games and running. Let's see how far we can ride it out.
Yeah, I just want to comment on what Koki just said about defense. And maybe it's just me, but it feels to me that the refs are allowing rougher play. They're not calling as many fouls, right? And that actually works in the Knicks' favor. And I don't know if it's because, we're as Knicks fans, we're used to, right? In the past, anytime the Knicks even breathe on another team's player, it's a foul. But it looks like this year, I get the sense that the refs are letting the Knicks play physical.
I think it's just like, so like in football, the Seahawks used to do this, right? Where like, the Legion of Boom, they committed fouls on literally every play. They're holding you, they're grabbing you. And it's like, you just figure that, yeah, sure, you'll get like 3, 4, 5, whatever pass interference calls over a game. But if you do it the entire time, they're not going to call one every single play, right? They're just not going to. So it's like with the Knicks, like they played like, I think the only teams I've seen that play like equally as physically, I would say are like Miami when they're fully healthy. I would say the Lakers when they're fully healthy, and then maybe the Bucks when they're and the Sixers, Bucks and Sixers when they're fully healthy. Those are like the only teams I think that are playing as physical as the Knicks, and I think that's a reason why like that Knicks, like those Knicks Sixers games, they just didn't call anything for like 48 minutes because they were like, okay, both these teams are playing like this. That's fine. And I think the Knicks ultimately, like, you kind of noticed it today where I thought in the first half they were getting more calls going against them. And then in the second half, like, you know, again, like the refs just aren't going to call for 48 minutes most of the time. So it ends up like evening out, I think, for the most part. So, yeah, I mean, I think the Knicks are more or less putting pressure on refs to be like, hey, look, do you really want to foul like 5 guys out of this game? Or are we just going to play basketball? And I think over the course of 48 minutes, most of the time, the refs are like, okay, well, I guess we'll just have guys realize it's a contact sport.
Yeah,
No blood, no foul.
Yeah.
I think it helps too once you get like a reputation. It's like when you have Tibbs too. It's like that all of a sudden the whole perception of the league, how they view you changes. So it's like, oh, you know, they're a tough defensive team, so of course that layup wasn't a foul; it was actually a block, and like you'll get away with some stuff because of that.
And it's also that time of the year too. You know, the refs know what time it is. It's, you know, April. We're getting close to playoff time. Everyone knows the game is different from the regular season to the playoffs. So it's going to become more physical. They're gearing up. They're getting into playoff mode. You know, the players have got to prepare for that as well.
Yeah, and since all like the teams are kind of like bunched together too, it's like how often do they want the refs deciding these games, especially down the stretch of the season? So it's like, thank you. I'm stoked on this. Like, I hope this is like a thing that changes and like kind of keeps consistently, because it's like I like watching them play, and like I like to see some bodies hit the floor. I mean, Randle, I think like truck sticked Collins at one point for a layup. And like I could definitely see at another time that being a charging call, but you know they let it go, and it was a big shot for us.
Yeah, I mean, you know, both teams shot around 25 free throws. The Knicks actually had 25 attempts. The Hawks had 24, but it didn't feel like that, right? I feel like the majority of the Knicks free throws came in the fourth quarter there when the Hawks got into a little bit of foul trouble. And Trae Young, you know, he only had 7 free throw attempts, but he got those really annoying calls. And Lou Williams is pretty crafty getting to the line with 5. Other than that, I feel like the refs didn't, like you guys have mentioned, didn't really impact the ebb and flow of the game. And it was a nice little back and forth flow, except for the fourth where it was huge for the Knicks, right? We want the Knicks to do well. We want to get the benefit of the calls there, and getting the Hawks into foul trouble early on, I think, you know, it was really clutch to let the Knicks, you know, get back into the game, slow it down a bit. Because, I mean, look, Randle played 40 minutes, RJ played 40 minutes, Bullock played 40 minutes. Again, so that's 80 minutes for our top 2 players in the last 2 games. So I'll take some of those whistles being blown and the game stopping and let these guys catch their breath a bit.
How long has it been since Burks has been out? Has it almost been 2 weeks? Could he be COVID-free by now?
It's like 3 games.
2 or 3 games, yeah. 2 or 3
It's only
games.
been 2, yeah.
God, it feels longer than that.
But even when we got them in a penalty, though, I don't really think it was just like us getting the benefit of calls. I like we were crazy hot in the first half, and just me observing the game, I'm always like, all right, if I'm on fire, you know, the law of averages is going to kick in. You can't expect that the whole game all the time. I think it was just smart play because, you know, in the third, we went into a bit of a hole because we went cold a little bit. So, you know, smart players are going to get aggressive and start going to the rim. And what I did notice that once we got them in the bonus and we start going to Julius with the game on the line, I was like literally posting, stop taking jumpers. They're in the bonus. Like, you know, give yourself a chance to draw the foul. And I think for the most part, they did that. I didn't like the last 2 shots he took. He hit one of them. The other one, he didn't get off in time. But, you know, for the most part, they stayed aggressive. And I think that's why they got those calls.
Yeah, I think the Burking is kind of interesting just in the sense that, like, when he does come, I mean, I just can't get over, like, you can see the difference in the offense when Rose comes on the floor versus when Alfred's out there. And like, I'm not even going to bother at this point, like blaming Alfred Payne, because this is just what he is as a player. So like blaming him is pointless when we're choosing to put him out there. But when Burks is back, like, you know, like obviously Burks has been really good for the Knicks, but you can see that with him out, like all of a sudden Quickley's getting more touches again and he's putting up points again. And I think what you see is that like when Burks is on with those two, like with Rose and IQ, one of them, which tends to be Quickley, ends up having to
stand in the corner.
Yeah, stand in the corner. Just ends up getting way less touches, way less on ball reps. And I mean, for me, like that's the frustrating part of it, because it's like you can spread out those perimeter guys without and move Elf to the bench and probably benefit your team over the full 48 minutes. Like, I don't think the bench is going to fall off a cliff if Rose isn't there to run the show, because you'll have IQ and you'll have Burks be able to play together. And they did that really well, actually, before Rose even got here. So like, I don't see that as a big problem. And obviously you can always stagger the rotations and stuff like that too. So I really hope that, you know, when we get, because I just think like, okay, you can get away with this stuff in the regular season, that's fine, but in the playoffs, like, you can't punt on even
17 minutes a night.
Yeah, you can't punt on that stuff just because you're like, well, he's been a good soldier and I want to reward him. Like, nah, cut the shit. Like, you just gotta, you know, like, thank you, Elfrid Payton, for eating minutes in the regular season, but like, we got to get our better players out there. Like, I don't know. I'm not a baseball guy, but like, in baseball, aren't there pitchers that are like innings eaters in the regular season?
Yeah,
they're
those
just
are
like
the ones that suck the most.
Yeah, and like, once you go to the playoffs, you don't throw them in there, right? Like,
right.
So, yeah, like, I mean, that's what Elfrid Payton is right now. So hopefully it's the same kind of adjustment when we get to the playoffs for Tibbs.
Yeah, maybe they're trying to. Maybe they're trying to save Rose. Trying to save Rose for the playoffs. I think that's kind of that because like, he really can't do a ton of minutes because he's kind of old and he like definitely runs out of steam a lot. So I'm hoping that's what it is, but that's, you know, me just trying to talk myself into it.
He played 30 tonight, but, you know, I think what was actually interesting was when RJ was on the bench, you know, for that stretch down the fourth quarter. We played a lineup of was Rose, Quick, Bullock, Randle, and Noel. You know, so then if Burks comes back, you're going to also find one of those guys on the bench there. RJ was on the bench for how many minutes? You know, he didn't come back until Rose fouled out, actually, towards the end there. So I think that was kind of one thing that was interesting. I was talking to my friend Alan while we were watching it. He's like, where is RJ right now? You know, but I was saying that lineup was playing well. There was really no need for them to change it at that point. But when you bring Burks in, it gets a little muddled. You know, Wingo's in the chat asking when do we get Burks back? You know, we don't know yet. It's probably going to be sometime mid next week if we have to take a guess. But, you know, when that does come back, then to you guys, with what we've been seeing now with Bullock, you know, playing defense, hitting threes, what should be our down the stretch lineup then? Who's our five guys down the stretch?
I mean, I'll go first. We touched on this a few podcasts ago, but, you know, I think at this point, Randle and RJ definitely got to be out there. So then you're looking at three other guys. So me personally, I'm not saying what Tibbs is going to do, but I like IQ out there with those two guys because he's a big shot maker. And when we talk about guys like that, it's a mentality. Like, you know, if you know ball and if you play ball, there's just certain dudes, they can hit shots, but when the game's on the line, they're running from the ball. They don't really want it. IQ wants the ball. So if they get doubled, you know, you swing it over him, you know he's going to take the shot, and he's a good shooter, so there's a chance he can make it. So that's your three. Then you need a big man, you know what I'm saying? So Noel, for the most part, I like the rim protection that he has out there. Now I understand sometimes you won't want him in a game because he's not really sure-handed and he's not like a great free throw shooter for a big or anything. But you know, if you need a stop, that's your rim protector that you want out there. And that leaves one other guy, and it's really between Bullock or Burks. I'm starting to lean towards Bullock. You know, the three-point shooting is just really good. He never tries to do too much. The only thing with Burks is sometimes he's a little ball dominant and he'll take a shot when you really don't want to. I mean, I respect the fact that he has the nuts to put it up, but everybody can't, you know, get the ball and want to do that. So I think if you got IQ, RJ, and Randle out there, you just need a shooter in the corner, and I think that's Bullock. So just to recap, you know, I'm going Randle, RJ, Noel, Bullock, and IQ. That's my five.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned this a few games back. The Knicks' two most clutch shooters or scorers actually is IQ and Burks. Right. This is, I think, was points per 36 during the last 5 minutes of the game, which is usually
they're both top five. They're both top five in points scored in the fourth quarter. So,
yeah,
whatever that means. Yeah.
So I personally, obviously Randle, Barrett. I would prefer Taj. I think Taj is a smarter player. and he's more of a crunch player. I get that Noel can block and challenge shots, but I think Taj does a pretty good job of that as well. He does a better job of boxing out, which can be critical, and he doesn't stand in the paint area as much. Because I noticed that there was one play where I think Pell was in, and Pell actually moved out of the paint, and he drew a defensive 3-second against Okongwu. If that was Noel would just be standing there right next to Okongwu, and so that to me kind of is something that Taj would do. I don't know that that's something Noel would do. So I would go with Taj, Julius, Barrett. I don't know, the last two probably. If you use IQ, you need someone that can handle the ball, I think, right? Because I don't know that IQ is great at handling the ball in crunch time. He's more of a clutch scorer or shooter. So I think Burks is probably their best ball handler out of the between Burks and Bullock. So I'll go with Burks and IQ, along with Randle, Barrett, and Taj.
I feel like this is a good problem to have, but I feel like we have too many guys that need to be in that closing lineup to then we have enough spots, because I feel like you have to go small because you want everybody out there. So it's I would have to do Randle, RJ, Burks, IQ, and Rose. I don't know how you don't have Rose out there. You need him, and it's I love having Taj out there because you bring up a good point, but also you didn't mention how well he sets screens. So it's that helps RJ and IQ and Rose out infinitely well, because it's he actually can set a hard screen and helps you get some extra separation. So it's just we just have too many places and not enough roster spots. And it's finally it's weird to say that, because usually we're have people that we don't really want out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the sole reason I brought it up was because, to me, I think Derrick Rose has now earned that position to be there. I think Derrick Rose needs to be the point guard. He has that veteran experience. He had that big kick-out pass to Reggie Bullock last game to get us the win. So I think he's that ball distributor who's not, a ball handler who's looking more to distribute instead of Burks or an IQ who might be looking more to score, which is what we kind of need down the stretch. So to me, as much as I would love to have IQ down in there, to me, it's got to be Derrick Rose, RJ Barrett, Bullock, Randle, and then probably Gibson, if I have to pick between Gibson and Noel, just to kind of give us that vet presence. Jim mentioned the screens and kind of those veteran savvy that sometimes you don't get from Noel. To me, I think that's the most ideal lineup, both defensively and offensively. Still get a couple of shooters down there, but I think Rose is best to kind of distribute the ball. But Shwinny, give us your input, man, on what your kind of crunch time lineup is like.
It's kind of hard because I think that, we see it with Tibbs all the time where he doesn't really have a set closing five he goes to. But sometimes, it just depends on who he thinks has it going. But I think consistently with the five I would want to have out there, it's probably Rose, RJ, Randle. Given Mitch is out, so Noel, and I would probably like to have Bullock, but it feels weird leaving Quickley out. But that's kind of the thing, right? Is when Quickley is rolling offensively, when he's scoring, when he's shooting well, especially, you can live with giving sacrificing some defensive integrity by leaving out RJ or Bullock for Quickley, but he has to be hot. And when he's not hot, we've seen, what Tibbs likes to do. And I guess you can also make the argument that Burke should close over Bullock or and that's kind of the thing with this team is it's a fun team. It's been a really good team, but I think Knicks fans need to just be these are not the guys. There are a lot of guys in this team that I love and I'm, have contributed to turning things around here. But there's a lot of guys that if we don't have a set starting five that we really this is definitely our best five to close a game, that says something, right? That says okay, so we still really have question marks. And I think ultimately what it is when Burks is hot, you want to close with Burks, right? But if he's not hot, then you'd rather have Bullock out there, right? Because Bullock is a steadier player. He's just Bullock is going to do the same thing every night. consistently, right? Like if you look at his shooting splits by month, it's like every month it's like 38% from 3, 40% from 3, 40% from 3, 41%, 39%. There's not like this 31%, then he shoots 48% one month. It's all very consistent. And I think like ultimately like what that tells me and what I think is just we need to get a more like we need obviously people talk to death like and we all know like we need to get a primary ball handler, a consistent starting point guard, and maybe he quickly develops into that. He's not that right now, obviously, but maybe he develops into that, or maybe we have to go into the free agent market or trade market or draft, whatever it is. We need to find that guy. But I also think we need to get another wing. Like I think we need another kind of like RJ can make something happen, right? He's still like very raw in that sense, but we've seen him have stretches even late in games where he really like takes over and starts forcing the issue and helps us like, create shots and all that shit. I think we need another wing that can like make plays with the ball in his hand consistently. And Burks has been really good, but I think we all know like he's a streaky guy. Like he was on a real burner before he got I don't know if he actually has COVID or what's going on, but like whatever it is, he was on a real big hot streak right before that. But
he was also shooting like 30%, like the 6 games before that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think like that up and down is tough. But it's like, it's the same. It's like ideally you have a wing situation like, ideally pie in the sky stuff like the Clippers or like Celtics or something like that. But yeah, just having a second wing that can provide a lot of the same kind of like, yeah, he can score, he can play make, he can rebound. He can switch positions defensively. Like if you have another guy like that, I think it would add a lot of dimensions. And I think that's why he ends up having to mix and match a lot with specifically like the wing spots where you've seen us close with Bullock and RJ and Burks and Bullock, or even like Quickley at times when he's hot, he comes in and plays at the off guard spot or something like that too. So that's kind of just a sign to me that like as good as this team is and how much fun it is and how much Tibbs is getting out of them. And I think he genuinely does really like this team and likes coaching them. I think internally they probably know that like they need to upgrade certain spots.
I think that's why they went after Gordon Hayward right in the offseason.
Yep.
Because that's the exact type of role are you talking about. A shot creator, he can shoot, he can create shots, he can pass, he can play a couple of different positions. Right? He's an upgrade talent wise over what they have. So yeah,
he would be super. He would be super Burks. He would be like what we want from Burks, but better.
Right.
I mean, the best way to sum it up is I'm gonna put on my Tibbs speak. Situational, baby. That's what we take it down in the fourth quarter. It's just situational for those wing spots. But just looking at the season and this game as a microcosm of that, I just think it's a battle of attrition. And this is one of those years where I think that like guys going down at certain points, like Burks being out, Rose being out at a point, it's helped us because when everyone's healthy, it's just too many players who deserve to play. And we've seen in the past with like coaches like Fizz where you got 12 guys who there's not a lot of separation between, the guys middle of the pack after like the top two, and they feel compelled to play everyone. And next thing you know, you got 11-man rotation and there's no chemistry, there's no rhythm because he's trying to keep everyone happy. But I think what I like about Tibbs and doling out those heavy minutes is he has his core guys that he's going to rely on. And then he rotates everyone else, outside of that as situational. And then, guys are going to go down the way Burks is out with, probably COVID. Rose was out with COVID. Mitch is out. Other guys had to step up. So it kept everyone ready. And I think the team has benefited from that because, next man up mentality has meant everyone has played a role to some degree where they've gotten consistent minutes at different points in a year. And I always say Tibbs is a straight shooter because he said that in his interviews. He said there's going to be a point where everyone's going to get a shot. And pretty much everyone has. And, I think that's worked out for us this year.
One. Yep.
No, go ahead, Mo.
So the one thing that I've noticed, I'm just kind of piggyback on what Coke said, right? The Knicks, they have a bunch of 1-year vets. None of those guys are playing for their next contract, right? It all seems everybody's on the same page. Everybody's in tune. They're playing to win now, not for what they're going to make next year. And that's a really big plus.
Your boy Peyton.
Except for Peyton.
Almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the only one that really goes rogue.
Yeah.
Well, that was what drove me nuts about Randle last year. It seemed that he would always like break the offense and go rogue. Like he was the guy on the 1-year contract as opposed to like Morris. And it's like that's the one big difference between this year. It's like he's like, oh yeah, I definitely want to fit in. Like I want to be the leader of this team. You know, like I'm not going to let a 1-year contract guy usurp me. And another thing too is that it's so funny that like if RJ was getting benched for a 1-year vet and wasn't closing down the stretch, even on a bad game, I'd be like ranting and raving. And now this year, I'm like, yeah, that's totally the right decision. You know, like you should put Bullock in there instead. It's
but
funny.
that's a far cry from what people were saying early on in the year when we were playing those vets and trying to win games. So, but that's the reason why I brought up that conversation about what we want our lineup to be down the stretch, even though we talked about it a few podcasts ago. All of us had different answers this time than we did last time, which just goes to show you that now how we're evolving, how we're changing as a team, and players are stepping up when they're needed. You know what I mean? So I think we all had different lineups there, which just goes to show you that the team is just going to end up putting the best players in the situation, and we kind of have to trust in Tibbs. Just to kind of kick it to the chat there, our boy Wingo's trying to talk about Mr. Situational and getting Frank when he need defense. Knox came in when we needed some threes. You know, I'd love to see Frank down there, but Frank's only going to come in literally in the last possession when we need to stop, and no more than that. You know, I'm a big Frank fan. Shwin, if you didn't know, probably the only one, the biggest one on the pod here. But you know, Frank's not going to get that time. Sorry, Wingo. He's just going to come in and get the last few stops there. And then Rob says, you know, Nerlens has actually been closing games in these 8 wins as opposed to Taj. He says when they were letting Taj play closing games, we were losing more. You know, Nerlens definitely has some momentum shifting plays and some bigger plays. But honestly,
who did he block in overtime? That was a big play.
He got him. He got somebody with 2 hands. I don't remember who it was though.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
Yeah,
he has one block like that like every game where it's just like you don't expect it and somehow he like swats it away.
He's been stopping people at the rim literally every game. I feel like we always talk about that momentum shifting block. So, you know, I could see the argument for Noel to play down low, but, you know, to the point that Moo and I said, that veteran savvy, you know, doing what he, you know, forcing those 3-second violations, those hard screens, Jim, you brought that up. You know, those are the things that Todd brings, those intangibles, which are a little bit better than I think Noel down the stretch. But Noel does shift the momentum a little bit more with a highlight play. But, yeah, Joey Papas thinks you know, Noel needs to be resigned there. Also, again, Coke, he loves your mask, you know, saying you're taking the pandemic pretty seriously. Everybody else over here, man, just trying to get, you know, a lot of Frank talk in the chat right now. And then I don't think we're going to get Frank too much in there. But, you know, Solomon Hill, everybody's trying to get on Solomon Hill right now. Let's talk about how dirty he is, man. He almost took out Rose's ankles. Well.
Yeah, no, I don't even like. I thought the thing on top, like I don't know what the hell Breen and Clyde were watching, but they were like, "Oh, Taj brought the ball in front of his face," and I'm like watching the replay. I'm like, he's got it by his nuts. Like I don't know what. Like it's not by his face at all, and Solomon Hill just smacks him in the face, and you can hear Rose in the background being like, "You got to check that." Like anytime somebody gets hit in the face, you're supposed to automatically go check it, and he's right about that. Of course, Josh Tiven, who's apparently, I swear to God, he refs every single one of our games, and every single game I want to punch him in the face. Yeah, they don't check it. So like, there was that, and then the Rose thing. Like I thought he was gonna like murder him or something. Like I don't know what's going on there. And like I know it sounds ridiculous because the Hawks actually, you know, Trae Young got like none of the things like Capella when he fell like that wasn't dirty. These guys were like actually making back. I mean, Pell wasn't even looking at the ball. He had contested the shot and he had turned to like look at the rebound, and then Trae ends up landing on his foot. But like, no, Solomon Hill, man, this guy, I don't know if he's dirty. He's either out of control and a moron, or is dirty. And either way, it's a joke. Like he's just one of these guys who's gonna like he already did it. He already got somebody hurt. He got LeBron. He hurt LeBron James, right? Like and I watched that game, and I was like, at the time, like I didn't think it was dirty. And I didn't think he was trying to make a dirty play, but I was like, yeah, he's definitely like out of control. And he had 2 of these plays tonight, at least 2 tonight. And it's just like at some point that's not just being like you're just a moron, and you're like somebody that I don't like. He's like the guy that if you're playing pickup, you're like, yeah, I'm actually going to sit this game out. You know, like, I'm going to sit this game out.
Yo,
I mean,
man,
and he also killed them too. He missed like 4 clutch free throws down the stretch. They probably win the game if he doesn't brick those shots. So it's like, yeah, that's sacrificing our own players, but he also lost them the game by being terrible.
Hill is one of those dudes that, like, if he's on the other team, you hate him. But if he was a Knick, we would love him. And I think it's like the epitome of he's one of those guys. The only reason he's in the league is because he plays so hard and borderline dirty. You know, remember Bruce Bowen? He was the same kind of player. Some people were like, yo, boy, does he play hard. And other dudes are like, boy, is he an asshole. You know what I'm saying? So I just think it's one of those situations. If he doesn't go that hard and push that envelope, he wouldn't be in the league.
Yeah.
You know, the guy will be playing in China somewhere.
Yep.
So I kind of respect it. Beverly's another one of those guys. You know, he hurts guys, gets on players' nerves, whatever, pushes that envelope.
Those guys are actually talented, though. Those guys are actually talented, though, compared to Solomon Hill, because he doesn't shoot it from 3 like Bruce Bowen does, Patrick Beverly does. He's not going to lead a team. He before this season, he played 48 games for Memphis last year, 11. He hasn't really broken 50 games that much. You know what I mean? He was kind of a fringe player for a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. I just think he's more dirty than talented.
The thing is, he's not talented offensively, but he's talented defensively, because I know one thing, when John Collins was on Randle, I was just like, go at him every time. With Hill out there, Randle had a tough time. Now, I'm not saying Solomon is a 3-and-D guy because he's missing a 3, but he's a D guy. You know what I'm saying? And as a power forward, sometimes you need that. Just a guy who's going to get in someone's shirt, get on their nerves. To me, that's talent. Hard work is talent. Playing hard is talent.
So, Jimmy, we're going to talk about who gave him that crazy contract.
Yeah, because he get paid like a truckload of money.
Yeah, Dell Dumps.
How much money do you know? Because like he's like zero skill.
It was like 80 million something or other crazy, something crazy like that over a long term. Kyle, do you have that number? Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, Dell Dumps was the one guy that you could point to during the Knicks, really awful years as the one GM that's worse than what the Knicks had. But I think it was something crazy like 88 million over 5 or 6.
Well, Solomon Hill?
Yeah.
48 million over 4.
Oh, okay. Still bad.
Still a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
not as crazy as we thought.
Not as crazy as I thought.
He's one of those guys, like, if your team is set and you just need a defensive power forward to bring that energy, I would put the guy on my team. Because
like Lance Thomas.
To me, he's better than Lance, though. Lance was like a fake defender. He wasn't effective. He was just like, I'm giving effort, but I'm not really doing anything. You know what I'm saying?
He defended Harden once, and they failed to pay him a bunch of money.
Yeah, Lance was a bum, but hell, he actually can defend. Like Julius, when he was on him, it was a struggle. But I got a question to throw at you guys, though. Mm-hmm. We've talked a lot about Tibbs and his effect. I don't feel like we've talked about Leon Rose enough. And I'm just looking at my notes, right? Okay, you got Leon Rose drafted quickly. I'm not even going to talk about Obi because then that's going to just take the conversation left. I don't want to do that again. But let's talk about he drafted quickly. He brought Bullock back. They didn't have to, exercise that contract. Then he signed Burks and he signed Noel. That's 4 big moves that are really unsung. So who has had the bigger effect on his team? Tibbs for the way he's gotten everything out of the roster, or Leon Rose for those, 4 moves that I just mentioned, and every one of those 4 players has been integral to our rotation. Give me your thoughts.
I'll go first. I think it's still Tibbs. I definitely agree that Leon Rose, he had limited resources to work with in terms of, the Knicks were still a really bad team. So, nobody really big was going to go and sign. So I think they realized that early on, which is a good thing, right? Because unlike Steve Mills, who tried to, I guess, convince himself that, the big names will come, off of a 24-win season, however many games we won. I think he was realistic. So he got guys that worked well, that fit, and that, were vets that weren't going to be, I guess, shopping for the next contract. And it worked, right? He's also the one that brought in Tibbs, right? So that's on Leon Rose too. But I still think Tibbs is the main factor, and you see it everywhere, right? You see it in Minnesota, and I know people got on him for how things went, but Minnesota, before he got there and after he left, it's a train wreck, right? So the fact that he managed to win, what was it, like 40 some odd games with that team, that says a lot. And I think he's carrying that over, getting the guys to play hard, play defensively, play together. I'll go with Tibbs, but yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think you see that, even if we look at the other team that they played tonight, the Hawks are kind of the same way, right? Their GM is, I think, Travis Schlenk from the Warriors. And a lot of guys said that Travis was one of the big reasons for building that Warrior team. Right, he had a lot of input, and you can see it. He's bringing in guys that are kind of the same way. He brought in Gallo, right? Gallo was good early on, then he got injured. He brought in Bogdanovich. Bogdanovich was great, right? Honestly, he's a guy that I was watching, throughout the whole game. I was like, man, I wish he was on this team. Right? So, and I think he was someone that we talked about the Knicks going after, right? We've talked about it for a few years. He brought in Boggs, he brought in Rondo for a little bit, and I think that stabilized their team. And it's kind of the same mentality, right? You're trying to build a team within what you have. No one was coming to the Hawks, just like nobody was going to come to the Knicks. So you have to build a foundation, and then you move from there. So I think, definitely I agree with you, Coke. Rose is not getting as much credit as it should, but I still think Tibbs is the bigger impact. But then again, like I said, Rose brought in Tibbs, so that's Rose too, right?
Before the next man up, I just want to shout out Joey from the chat because he brought up some points that even I missed. Leon, he traded for Rose too. Now, anyone who's going to step in and speak for Tibbs, they're going to say, well, Tibbs pushed him to bring in Rose. But also remember that Worldwide West and Leon assembled the rest of that coaching staff, our developmental guys. So talk to me. Who's up next? Tibbs or Leon Rose in the front office?
I don't know how you separate the two of them, because it's like, they found guys that fit Tibbs' scheme perfectly. You know what I mean? That's what's so important about having simpatico between the coach and the front office is that they have like a style and an idea and how they want to play and who they want to bring in. I think, I guess if I'm going to have to choose one of them, I'm going to have to say Tibbs, because I'm assuming he's the guiding force behind the philosophy on how we're playing. So I think that's where I'm going to look, is Tibbs.
Shwin, we'll let you go next, man. What are your thoughts on that one?
I think, they hired Tibbs and they signed all these guys. I don't think if Tibbs had his way that they would have. We read the Your Own Weitzman piece that came out like a month ago. He clearly wanted them to make bigger moves than they did.
Right.
They resisted that. They added players that weren't big names. And I'll be honest, I obviously didn't expect this. They're 33-27 right now. So I did not expect them obviously to be this good this year. But I actually liked what they did in the offseason, not just because of they kept cap space open and they did a salary dump and they got picks. No, if you just look at who went out and who came in, I thought that they upgraded the roster. So to me, that's all I really wanted. I didn't if they got Hayward, that would have been great. But Hayward, they were going to have to pay him, a ton of money, right? What did he end up getting? $120 from the Hornets. I'm at that price. I'm very okay with walking away from that. I think that sometimes the best moves you make are the ones you didn't make. So I think they deserve a ton of credit for I'm sure that Tibbs was all over them to be get me fucking whoever, get me Hayward, get me Marcus Morris, get me, 5 guys that are 28. And I know, I get it. That's why he's not that's why he's not an executive anymore. Right. That's what he is. Coaches want to win now. So you have to balance that desire. And they know who they hired. Leon Rose and Worldwide West know Tibbs more than better than anybody else will ever know him.
Right.
So they knew exactly what they hired. But I don't even see the point in arguing it. But Tibbs deserves all the credit he's getting for maximizing this roster to the degree he has. And it's really to the point where, the only thing that we can really complain about with his coaching at this point is like, yeah, well, I wish you didn't play Elfrid Payton 17 minutes a night or whatever it is. And if you really think about like, as annoying as that is, if you really think about like in the grand scheme of things, what that says about your coach, like that says quite a bit. If like that's your own one complaint about a coach, broadly speaking, I mean, I know people have issues about like his minutes and rotations, but I think like broadly speaking, that's the one thing that almost everybody agrees upon, right? Like, yeah, like other than that, I feel like everybody has different feelings about different parts of it, but so he gets all the credit he deserves, but like, yeah, I definitely think Leon Rose deserves a lot of credit and that entire front office they put together because they've made moves that have made them more competitive. They got guys that have made them more competitive on the court. They got guys who fit with how Tibbs wants to coach the team. They got guys who fit with the guys that were already in place in the team that they want to try and build around. They got guys who added to the culture of the team, right? Like that we all talk about, that everybody's talking about, this culture, like the culture is great and everything is so great. Everybody's talking about it. And it is great. And they're part of that. Those guys they brought in are part of that. And they clearly valued that, I think, when they added certain players. And they did. And they did that. And they also did stuff that that was for the long-term benefit of the team, right? Like they did add picks. They added like 4 second rounders, I think, with all of their moves that they've made. They ultimately even the Quickley, like they got Quickley, but they also traded, like they ended up getting an extra pick out of that. Like, they've just done a lot of things that balance both the desire to win now and to be competitive in the long term. And I think like to balance that, yes, I know it's their first year and all that stuff, but like it's New York. And I think like after the kind of disastrous last couple of years they had for a variety of reasons, it was important to get off to a good start in some ways. And I think they nailed that. And look, if you like, people can dismiss this all they want to, but like the fact that they're getting off to the start they have, like I'm telling you, you want the Knicks to be a well-run team. You want the Knicks to be competitive. Like you want getting on James Dolan's good side and earning some good favor with him is a good way to do that. And not spending a ton of money and winning at a high level, I'm sure he's very happy about that, especially right now with COVID and everything. I'm sure he's very happy about that. So when push comes to shove, when they do need to spend money, when they do need to go over the cap or go into the luxury tax or whatever, he's a lot more likely to do that than he is if they're, doing Isaiah Thomas stuff and already paying luxury tax for a team that's going nowhere.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point. And, in the chat, to get to Coke's question, there was a bunch of people saying, had some split discussion there with some people saying Leon, some people saying Tibbs. You had an Alice shout out. You had the assistant coaches brought up again with the work that they've brought. In my opinion, to get into that conversation, yeah, Leon Rose brought in a good roster, didn't make any panic moves, splashy moves, so to speak, to get some of those players that Tibbs might have wanted. But what Tom Thibodeau has done with his talent, which, let's face it, pretty much everyone here had no idea or no shot of us getting to the level where we're at right now, right? With the roster that was constructed, with the coaches that we had, with everybody in place that we're all praising right now, the coaching staff. So to me, if we're gonna do, is it the front office versus the coaching staff? To me, it's the coaching staff, which is more responsible for where we're at right now with what they were able to do. We are a team that's greater than the sum. Our sum is greater than our parts. You know what I mean? Or whatever the hell the saying is right now. I'm on a high. I'm happy. But the coaching staff and what they've done with the talent that we have, I think is more responsible than the front office. Yeah, the front office put it together. It's not a debate, so to speak. It's a good question to have who's responsible. To me, they're both responsible. Both have contributed positively, but I don't think we'll be where we're at if it wasn't for Tibbs and the coaching staff. But definitely a good point to bring up. But let's kind of shift it back to the game before we look forward to our next game. Coke, let's get your scrub of the night tonight.
I'm going, a little unconventional this time. It's hard to give scrub of the night to a guy who dropped 18 points, but to me, John Collins earned it. Now, if you're thinking, how could a guy who dropped 18 efficiently get scrub of the night? I'll tell you how. When you play zero defense, you can't defend your power forward position, but you also can't, step up and defend bigs because then you're just too small. You're stuck in that tweener phase defensively. Offensively, you may be good, but you want to be a power forward and you get 3 rebounds and you fancy yourself as a max player, and you've also complained that the ball is in Trae Young's hand a little too much. and you had, a blow up in a meeting with him. I don't know. John Collins, to me, scrub of the night. I'm not impressed with the guy. He's a one-way player, offense only. During the trade deadline, there was talks about, if he would be moved. I wouldn't want that dude in New York at all. Terrible fit, if you ask me. So that's where I'm going with scrub of the night. Usually I kick it to our guests to give their version of scrub of the night. Shwin, give me your thoughts. It can be a Knicks player or a Hawks player. I don't care. Just call out a scrub, man.
I'll go with John Collins too. I thought he was terrible. I don't know what. I haven't watched the Hawks much at all during this little run they're having. And I've seen a lot of people saying like Collins is playing a lot better. I've read some articles that the Hawks guys and the Athletic have wrote about how Collins is a much better player this year. But I've watched him closely 3 times or I guess twice. I don't think he played the first game against the Knicks, but I've seen him play twice against the Knicks, and those 2 times Julius killed him. And Julius has killed a lot of people this year, so that's not like that doesn't need to be a knock on him. But the way he was getting abused today was just sad, and he's not creating much offense either. Like he's can pick and pop. He can shoot the 3. He can attack like on a closeout, I guess. But, I'm not scared of that guy at all. And Julius certainly wasn't. I mean, he just ran over him at the end of the game, at the end of regulation for that layup.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I thought, I think quite frankly, Julius doesn't respect him at all. I think he came into the game tonight expecting to have a huge night. And I think he looks at John Collins and he sees food, and he just decided to pick out. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, I'm really unimpressed with him. I think that he's not a bad player. I don't want to make it sound like he's terrible. But tonight, when you just see the discrepancy, like, this guy wants a max. Okay, fine. Prove it. Julius, I'm assuming he wants a max. He's having to prove it. There's a difference there. And I know that Julius is 26 and John Collins is 23 or whatever he is. But, I mean, look, he's not that young anymore that you can just be like, look, 23, 26, if he wants a max contract, prove it. And I just feel like the 2 times I've seen him against Julius this year, all he's proven is that he's not anywhere near worth a max. And I think any team that goes near that type of money for him is going to regret it.
They have a good.
Can I
They have a
in
good.
here real quick? So,
Sure.
So Shwin, you said he's not that young anymore. He's younger than Obi Toppin.
I do know that. I do know that.
Resist.
Oh man!
But I don't want to pay Obi Toppin a max either, and I don't have to for like 4 years.
He's actually not. That was
He's
a lie.
never gonna-
That was
he's never
a
gonna get
lie.
the max.
John Collins is 6 months older than Obi.
We have to always get an Obi Toppin
Yeah,
thing in.
it's not a no blood, no foul podcast if Kyle can't make an Obi joke.
But Rob Collins is in the chat saying we should rebrand Scrub of the Night to become the Alfred Award. I think I'm gonna run with that, man. Just call it the Alfred Award. I'm giving out the Alfred Award every game now.
There you go. Might as well. Yeah, he's the perpetual scrub of the night on the Knicks side anyway, so might as well. But let's take a look forward to Saturday, the Knicks' next game at 1:00, another matinee game for them. We go up against the Raptors, who just beat the Brooklyn Nets today. Looks like the Raptors are actually fully healthy now. Van Vliet came back, Lowry, Siakam, who it was trash last time we played him. He had that pandemic P bobble there at the end, the travel, I should say. So Colt, let's kick it to you for your prediction, man.
Hey, I'm staying on course, bro. Knicks again. We're gonna get what would that be? 9th in a row? I can't veer off course now, man. We've come too far to turn away. So until we drop a L, I'm gonna keep saying another win, man. Knicks get their 9th in a row, and remain the hottest team in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks haven't won 8 games since 2014, so that's 7 years. I think Kyle was like 8 back then, right?
All right, hold on. No, you're done. You're out of line. You're out of line. But
he's gonna block me out. But yeah, I mean, they haven't won 8 since 2014, and I think 2013 they went on an 11-game winning streak. So I think 11 is the mark. I think it's doable. But then again, definitely a win against the Raptors. I watched parts of the Raptor Nets game. The Nets weren't really all that great, to be quite honest. And the Raptors, I don't think they were all that great either. So I'll go with the win. Definitely, I'm with Coke. This is you go with it until it doesn't happen. So yeah, definitely Knicks.
I think we're gonna keep win. I think we're gonna keep winning until we hit the Suns game. I think that's what's gonna eventually end our streak. And I'm not sure when that is. I think it's next week. I'm pretty sure. But
the next game, it's Monday.
Monday. Okay, so I think the winning streak stops at 9. I think we're going to handle the Raptors pretty well. And it's the perks of having a young team and the COVID situation going on is that there's not like a ton of nightlife and like stuff open. So it's like a 1 p.m. game isn't really like the end of the world for our teams, because it's like I'm going to be worried about those games next year when like everyone can go out and stuff like that. So like I think we're going to come out and we're going to beat them up, because I also just want to see Randle kind of just destroy Siakam, because that's fun to me.
Shwin, what about your prediction?
Yeah, I think that the Knicks. I think that they're. I think they're going to win this game. I don't have any particularly strong reason to feel that way or not. I just think they will. It'll be a good challenge, because I don't think Toronto wants to be in the play-in. They want to be in the play-in. I think that those guys, when they're fully healthy, Fred VanVleet, Siakam, Kyle Lowry, they're not like joke players, right? They're serious players. They're not going to just punt on a season when they think like, hey, look, if we get in the play-in, we can beat anybody, right? That's how they think internally, in my opinion. So I fully expect them to come out and make it a competitive game, but I think we have enough to beat them, and I expect us to. I kind of like I think I said in a podcast right before this stretch, starting with, I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was before the Dallas game, but I thought that like that stretch was a stretch where we could conceivably win all 6 before the Suns game, but definitely 4, and we should be aiming for 5. So we have 5. So a 6th would be great leading into this. But yeah, I mean, going into that Suns game, it would be nice to bank that, because the Suns have been hot. They've been on fire this. I know that they won against an undermanned Sixers team, but they did win, and they've just been on a roll. They're the 2nd seed in the West right now. So I mean, they're on fire, and you can't expect to win that game. I hope that the Knicks themselves expect to win the game, because that's the mentality you should have. But like as fans, I don't expect to win that game. But so it would be nice to just go. And like the thing is, if you can just string together wins in this season, especially in this East, like you already see, right? Like, I mean, if you look at the standings, I mean, I know we're clearly the 4th right now, but we've built up a little separation here, right? Like, I think like between us and the Hornets, right? I mean, they're 20 and 29. We're 33 and 27 now. So that's a big gap.
We're up 3 games, I think.
Yeah,
so like 3 games over them, the Hornets.
Yeah, so I just think that like it's really important to string together. When you can string together wins, it's huge too. Hopefully Toronto. I think they play Saturday, maybe, or maybe Friday. I don't know, whatever it is. Hopefully they get a win and they feel a little good about themselves, and they come into the Garden and get smacked. That'd be nice.
I think that's what we're all hoping for, man. I have to agree. Actually, it looks like the game's now on national TV, so it looks like it's an ESPN game. The next
man.
We get Raptors at ESPN, and then Monday on Phoenix is an NBA TV game. So Knicks get back-to-back. You win 8 games in a row, they're going to put you on national TV. So, I think the Knicks do get a win against the Raptors. I'm definitely going to go that way, ride it till the wheels fall off. I'm not going to make a call on the Phoenix game yet. They are a tough team, one of my favorite non-Knick teams to watch this year just because of what they've done. But strictly looking at Toronto, even though they came back healthy right now, with getting VanVleet back, Lowry back, and, they've been a disappointing team this year while the Knicks have exceeded expectations. We're running hot, and I think the biggest thing nobody mentioned yet, the Knicks finally get more than 1 day off between games. We get 2 days off between games. The Knicks players can rest their legs a little bit, which is, something big that's needed. And I feel like it's been forever since the Knicks have had, multiple days in between games. So that rest should help. Matinee game doesn't matter. I think we beat Toronto in another close game. I don't see it being a blowout. And then, 9 games in a row before we head into Phoenix, and that's going to be one of the tougher matchups of the season by far. But calling to win next game. Let's start to wrap it up here, fellas. Coke, I'll kick it to you for your final thoughts, man.
Unanimous predictions again. This is third time, and every time we go unanimous, we usually carry it through, and everyone ends up being right. But I'm just gonna end off by saying, look, I became a Knicks fan back in the days, watching the old '90s Knicks, the Ewing teams. I remember staying up late to catch like the West Coast swing games that they would broadcast on Channel 9. And I'm a kid with like school the next day, but I just fell in love and I couldn't stop watching. And what's making me feel good about this season is that there's some little kid somewhere who's watching these, Tibbs Knicks with Bullock, Burks, and these guys who aren't big names. We're headed by Randle and RJ, dudes you don't think of as superstars. And they're falling in love with these Knicks because they bring the fight each and every night. And I just think this team is it's like the birth of a new generation of fans. So we're all sitting here on this cast because at one point we fell in love with the squad. And there's some little kids out there who's falling in love with the squad because of the brand of ball that we play, and we have an identity. And I think that's the most important thing about this season. We've definitely forged an identity. It's not like, that 2013-14 season. I think that's the year it was where we just had like a bunch of guys at the end of the road and, we were just chucking up threes, and it was a great season, but it didn't really build a culture. And I think that's the most different thing about this year. It reminds me of like when I, was falling in love with the orange and blue. And it's because there was a certain style and a brand of ball that you expected to be played each and every game. And we saw that tonight with the comeback.
Yeah, definitely. I've lived through two of those periods. I think Wingo's the only guy that's older. I lived through the 90s, right? I was a fan towards the tail end, becoming a Knicks fan during the tail end of the last, right? The Knicks of the early 70s. I know I don't look that old, but yeah. So
yeah, but you've aged great.
Thank you.
Somebody said you look like Mike Piazza in the chat actually earlier.
I gotta tell you guys stories. I actually had these two girls during college that thought I was Mike Piazza, but I'll tell you guys about that later. Yeah, believe it or not, true story. But I've lived through two of these, and the thing is, both of those had the same kind of play and the same kind of vibe, right? None of them had the best talent, but they grinded. Right, they play team ball, and that's the key: team basketball with guys that want to play together, that's focused on winning. And this is kind of heading in that direction. I don't know if that's it's going to be a third era of Knicks basketball. That's a little bit too early to predict, but I think it's got the same feel as definitely when the '90s Knicks started, right? I can't really tell because we'd have to ask Wingo about how the '69 Knicks felt, but it's got the same kind of vibe, right? So it's definitely a plus. Everybody, like I said, just enjoy the ride. Knicks fans that are younger, just be happy about it and then enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on what I always like to touch on. We finally have building blocks in place. Like I feel like we're like finally like adding win now pieces to this roster isn't like jumping the gun by any means. And it's been so long since I've really even felt like that. Even in like the mellow years, it like kind of just felt like we were kind of like treading water, not really like on the up and coming. We weren't an up and coming team, and it's like we're clearly that now. So that's just lovely to see, and I just hope that we can continue. And that none of this is like a fluke, I hope like next year we're going to be, competing for a playoff spot and all that. And we can continue to build and add stuff to this roster. And that's, pretty much it.
Shwin, how about your final thoughts, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I remember the 90s Knicks, especially the tail end. I remember the 2012-13 team. Like, I mean, that team wasn't sustainable. At the time, I definitely deluded myself into like why it could last, but most of that was all just based on hoping that Shumpert would take a leap and Tim Hardaway Jr. Like it's just not good odds. And I think that like when you look at what this team has, Randle's just 26, so he's in right in the middle of his prime right now. RJ's 20. Like he has these games, right? Like tonight, where you're like the first half, he's just stinking it up, and the second half, he like helps you win the game, helps turn things around, keeps you in the game. Like he's getting valuable reps. He's super young. I think Quickley. I'm gonna hold off on my thoughts on Quickley until the end of the season for real. But like, I think I'll say this. I think that like people think he's just a scorer and they want to put all these like limitations on him and what he can be. And I think that's wrong. I think that the games where he really goes off, those are like, you should keep an eye on that, because those are signs to me of a player with like a very high ceiling, and the ceiling of the skill set he brings is one that can really push a team somewhere. And he's 21. He's a rookie. OB, we'll see. Like, I don't think he makes any sense with us because Julius is apparently a god now. But like, we'll see what he becomes. And then we have 2 picks. Like the thing is, it's not just what's on the roster. It's also that they have these picks coming in. They have all this cap flexibility. They have a lot of avenues to improve a team that's already proving itself to be really good, with a lot of core pieces doing heavy lifting. So they have a lot of reasons for optimism and why they can add to what they have and improve in a variety of ways. So that's really exciting. And I think that like it's the most sustainable, successful period they've had basically since they drafted Ewing. Like that's ultimately why the 90s teams were successful. As much as all those other guys were great, like it's because they drafted Ewing and he was a superstar, and that makes everything easier. Like we'll see if, Julius, this is a star season he's having for sure. Can he do it next season? Can he do it for multiple seasons? Obviously we don't know yet, but if he does, and then you have an RJ Barrett and you have a Quickley and you have all these picks, like it's just about making the right moves, and this team can go places for sure.
And it looks like you got a fan in Rob who's telling you to keep on preaching about IQ. He's tired of hearing him saying he's only a microwave scorer off the bench. Stop putting a limit on his kid and let him dominate. I have to agree with you there. Let him grow. I think he's progressing pretty well this season. He definitely should not be limited to just a scorer. But I like to follow the echoes right there. I grew up on the 90s Knicks as well. So I think we're getting there. We're early on the path there. We got a star. We do have, like the way the team's built with enough cap space where, the Knicks exceeded expectations and are still able to grow, as opposed to some of the, quick fixes schemes that we've seen lately where they're trying to sign a bunch of vets that don't fit or anything that doesn't work. So we're definitely on the right path. I've been preaching the positivity on the team for quite a while now, and I'm glad to see everybody else is jumping on it. Although obviously it's easy, tonight getting 8 wins in a row now, something we haven't seen in 7+ years. But
Julius Randle did his thing tonight, getting to the 40-point mark for the 3rd time this season, 2nd time against the Hawks. And D Rose and IQ, brought the scoring punch off the bench, both dropping 20 tonight as the Knicks move into sole possession of 4th in the East, only 3.5 behind the Bucks now. We get a few days off, a few days of rest before the Raptors come out to MSG on Saturday afternoon. We thank everybody for tuning into this edition of the No Blood, No Foul podcast presented by Real GM. Shwin, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us again tonight, man. It was a fun time.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely, man. Everybody else in the chat, thank you guys for joining us as well. Make sure you hit the thumbs up and give us a like if you like what you heard. And make sure you subscribe so you can check out our next podcast when that comes out. We'll catch you guys Saturday afternoon, and we out.
This is our house. NYC forever when we mob out. See that kid drip, got that cloud. Till we run that clock out. MSG Mecca, our house. NYC forever, mob out. Kid drip, cloud.